So the Israelites safely escaped Egypt. They are now on their way to Canaan. They're going through the wilderness, heading to the promised land. After they escaped bondage in Egypt, though, they had a season in the wilderness. Turned out to be a 40-year season. But they've only been on the road for a few weeks now. And Pharaoh woke up one morning and said to himself, "Oh my gosh, what have I done? I have let my slaves go. I've lost my free labor force." And decided that he was going to try to undo what he had done. And so he gathered up his army and they raced after the Israelites. Well, it wasn't much of a challenge for Pharaoh to catch up to these 2 million people traveling on foot, men, women, animals, children. They're not going to be moving very fast. So at the point the Israelites become aware of the Egyptians' approach, it is imminent. They can see them coming after them. And the Israelites are in a very precarious position. They are far down on the Sinai Peninsula, and they are surrounded by water on 3 sides. And the 4th side is where the army was coming after them. I mean, it was a very scary situation and did not look good. So turn over to Exodus 14 now. We're going to look at our second part of this story. Exodus 14. So here they are. They're free. They're on their way to Canaan. But now Pharaoh's army is approaching them. So I'm sure when the Israelites saw the army, they trusted God, right? I'm sure that was their first thought. I mean, they had just experienced the great power of God setting them free, releasing them from bondage. So you would think that they would choose to believe God after God had just demonstrated his love and power, right? Nope, that's not what happened at all. So Exodus 14, verse 10, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." So how did the people respond? They freaked out. That first lesson, trust God, sure didn't stick very long with these people. The first sign of trouble, they want to turn around and go back. Really? You want to go back to bondage? Yep. They had already forgotten how horrible it was to live as slaves in Egypt. We just read that verse a couple minutes ago, and they've already forgotten. But you know what? We aren't so different. I mean, how many times have we been in a bind, been in a hard situation? We begged God, "Please help me. Please save me in this situation. Please provide a way out. Please provide an answer," only to find ourselves repeating the same dumb mistake very soon after that. It's a good thing that God is patient with us, and he is patient with us. He knows that we make the same mistakes over and over. And that's why God doesn't give up on us, even when we do these things. So here are the people. They're exposed in the desert with Pharaoh's army approaching them and no way of escape. So do you think God did not anticipate this moment? Do you think he went to all the trouble of sending the plagues, getting his people free from the Egyptians, releasing them from slavery, only to be caught off guard, saying, "Oh, gee, wow, I didn't see that one coming"? No. God knew before he ever set his people free, this day would come. God knew that. God is never caught off guard. He's never surprised. When you are going through difficult things, He is there, He's on it, He has a plan, He has a way out. He always does. God knew this day what was going to come, but what's more, He knew He had a plan. He knew He was going to save the people. They didn't know it that day, how God was going to save them, but God had a plan. So just like with the first class, God tells them the outcome before the soldiers arrive. And that's chapter 14, verse 13. Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. So what is the promise there? Hang on to that. The Lord will fight for you. That means you too, and me. The Lord will fight for each of us. We are His children, and He cares for us. God was going to fight this battle for them, and what was their job? He said what they were supposed to do here. Do not be afraid. Stand firm. Be still. Great advice. Don't be afraid. Stand firm. Be still. So what does it mean to stand firm? It means to believe in the character and the promises of God. That's what that means. Believe God is who He says He is. Believe He will do what He says He will do. That's what it means to stand firm. Knowing and believing the truth will give us the courage then to fight our fear. That is what will battle against our fear. And this is true for you today, and this will be true for you when you are 86 years old. What will help you fight fear today is to stand firm and believe in the character of God and the promises of God. Very powerful tool. We're supposed to believe God and let Him work on our behalf. And there's that trust thing again. So do you think anyone in that camp of 2 million people went to bed that night thinking, oh, I know what He's going to do. He's just going to part the sea tonight. He's just going to dry out that land and make these walls of water. Nobody could have possibly guessed what God had in mind. And I'm not sure anybody slept at night that night, because they were definitely in a scary situation, because in their minds, they were going to wake up and be slaughtered the next morning. The only thing that separated them at that moment from this army was the pillar of fire, and that was God Almighty. That was all that was between them and the army, but that's all they needed was God. So, verse 21, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove back the sea with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. Did you hear that? Dry land. Oh my goodness. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. So God sent a wind that was so strong it separated the sea. I mean, that's just incredible. He created these two walls of water, and He made a path in between the two. It wasn't even a muddy path. It's only been a few hours, and it was a dry path in one night. I mean, that's pretty cool if you ask me. So the people woke up the next morning, they gathered up their belongings, and they began to walk on this path between these two amazing walls of water. I mean, every family, every goat and chicken and grandma and baby and you name it, were all walking through here until they were safely across. Let's pick it up in verse 27. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. So God destroyed the entire army, and the Israelites didn't have to do a single thing. Can you see the power of God? Can you see His love and His ability to care for you? So let's ask this question. Is God a strong and reliable protector? would say so. And there's your second P, protector. So God did what only God can do. When there seemed no possibility of escape. But I also want you to see that God did allow Pharaoh's army to pursue them. God did allow that. He did allow the Israelites to see their imminent approach. They were in a tight spot. But the reason God did this is because He's growing their faith. He's trying to teach them these vital lessons that they have to have before they get to the promised land. They've got to learn these things before they get there. But even though God allowed these things, He did not allow His children to be destroyed. He saved them in this situation. He saved His people from being annihilated by Pharaoh's army. We too have been through many difficult things, and I wouldn't be surprised if this story doesn't raise questions in your own mind. But God didn't protect me when ... Every one of us has a story like that. God didn't protect me, and this is a very big question, and it's a question with many factors, and it's why I ask you to hang with me, because this is where we're going in Unit 2. We're going to explore these hard, difficult questions, like where was God? How can we begin to understand why these things happen? So we're going to get there in our second unit. You know, I have been at the edge of the sea so many times in my life. I've been through divorce, I've been through abuse, I've been through death, I've been through suicide. You know, I've had 5 family members that I've lost to suicide alone. So I know the hard side of life. I would be hard-pressed, you would be hard-pressed to say one difficult thing you've gone through in your life that I haven't experienced somewhere along the way. But I'm 4 times as old as some of you too. But so I've had a lot more years. But you name it, I've probably been through it. And in some of these situations, I do know why it happened and why God allowed it. And you know what? In some of these situations, I do not know. And I'm guessing I won't know this side of heaven. We don't always know why these things occur. But here's the thing I do know with absolute certainty, no matter what I've gone through, that list and more. Here's what I know for sure. God is good. God is kind. God is loving. God is trustworthy. God is just. I have no doubt about those things, even in light of that horrible list. That's who God is. And my lack of understanding that shows an incomplete understanding of God's ways. It's a reflection on my understanding. It's not a reflection on God's character. It's not a reflection on God's ability to protect us or provide for us or be a power source for us. It's a reflection that my understanding is still coming along. I'm still learning. I'm still learning from God. We will always be headed in the wrong direction if we choose to be our own protector. That's always going to be the wrong direction. We will always be walking away from truth if we think God doesn't protect us. Those are some things you can take to the bank. Exodus 14:31. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in Him and in Moses, His servant. So they did see His undeniable love and power and protection here. We'll see how long it lasts, though. God was teaching them to trust Him as their protector and not be afraid of impossible-looking circumstances. Not be afraid of them. So the second class is over. The second class is trust God even when it's scary. One more lesson, one more class. Let's look at our last P. God is our source of power, God is our source of protection, and God is our provider. So do you think, after seeing God part the sea right in front of their very eyes, I mean, those were the people who sought, they could reach their hand out and touch that water. I mean, how phenomenal would it have been to be there that day? Do you think that was enough to cause them to never doubt God again? 10 plagues, released from slavery, Brady's already on me here, and parting to sea. Would that be enough? You'd think it would, wouldn't it? Well, so here we go with our third part of this story. They've been on the road a few months and they're running out of food. Turn over to Exodus 16, 2 more chapters. They're out of food. Let's see how they're going to react. Exodus 16, verse 3. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Oh, right, that must have been God's plan. So he sent those 10 plagues. He released them from slavery. He saved them from Pharaoh's army, because his real plan was to take them out in the desert and starve them to death. Yeah, that was his real plan. I don't think so. So much for trusting God. At the first sign of difficulty, and what you need to relate here in the story is all human beings are this way. It's easy for us to look at this story and think, well, they're stupid. Obviously, God showed you could trust him. But we're all the same. We all struggle with this same issue. At the first sign of difficulty, they again doubt. They again doubt God's love and power and desire to help them. They truly did need food. It was a legitimate need. So why were they doubting God would supply it? After everything, they still don't believe them. And for the third time, each time he does these miracles, he tells them before the miracle happens. Why? So they understand without doubt where it came from. And he does this one more time here in verse 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day." There's the instructions. Gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. So the tests are getting progressive. The lessons are progressive. He's moving them further in their faith, deeper in their faith. He's trying to teach them these vital lessons. So this heavenly bread that God supplied was called manna. And manna was a sweet, nutritious wafer that fed these folks for 40 years, if you can believe it, 40 years, along with quail. And so we do see something new with the third test. It comes, this third class, it comes with a test. So when God released them from captivity, all they had to do was wait. Just wait and watch. Wait and watch, and God was going to make it all happen. When he parted the waters, all they had to do was wait and watch and let God do it. Just stand, be still, don't doubt him. Well, this one comes with an assignment. Gather only enough for one day. Guess what kind of a grade they got on the test? They got an F. They failed the test. One simple rule, and they did not obey it. They were out there with buckets and sacks and barrels and hoarding and gathering up the food and taking as much as they could back to their tents, being their own providers. So did God stop providing manna and starve the people because they were disobedient? He did not. See the love and grace of God. He still fed them. The manna still did come. So remember this. Even when we are not faithful, God is faithful to us. His faithfulness is not dependent on us. He is always faithful, even when we're disobedient. What was God trying to teach them? What did God want them to learn in this third story? I am your provider. Let me provide for you. Trust me to take care of you every day. And God had a very effective way here of convincing them that they could not nor should not try to provide for themselves. Guess how he did that? Verse 20. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. So how would you like to wake up and find your Cheerios crawling with worms? Yuck. The reason they were only supposed to gather enough manna for the day is because God wanted them to rely on him for their needs every day. He was trying to teach them. These lessons are no different than what he has for us today. Same lessons he wants us to learn today. He wanted them to know that it is his provision that meets their needs, not their efforts. And that's how we are as human beings. We think if we strive, if we try, if we work, if we earn, that we can take care of ourselves. Here's another one, guys. I won't even charge you for it. If you'll learn this lesson today as well, that only God can provide for you, and you can never be your own provider. And I don't mean you can't have a job and pull a paycheck. I am talking about the bigger picture of life. If you learn that today, you will be 10 miles ahead of 99% of adults. That's why I'm so excited you're here. That's why people have been begging me for 20 years. When are you going to do this for the teens? When are you going to do this for the teens? Because they know if you guys learn now and skip the next 20 and 40 years of disastrous consequences, then you won't have to suffer like they did. No matter what God did, they had no faith. No matter how many times God demonstrated his love and power, they did not believe him, they did not trust him, they did not go his way. Our third class is over. Trusting God requires a demonstration of faith. And there's your last blank, requires. This class may be over, but I'm not sure they've learned anything. So if you want, I want you to remember the Israelites, and I want you to remember what God demonstrated here in the wilderness. He wanted to do life with his children. Everything he did was motivated out of love. He wanted to lead them. He wanted to take care of them. But he knew they wouldn't trust him unless they saw his true character, so he revealed his true character. Still didn't help because they were stiff-necked, hard-headed, and cold-hearted. But he did reveal his character. He showed them their power. He released them from bondage. He showed them his ability to protect. He saved them from Pharaoh's army, and he demonstrated very clearly he could provide for them, even out in the desert, in the wilderness where there was nothing. He could provide for them by feeding them every day. God wants to be your source of power, protection, and provision too. He wants to be your God. The question is, will you let him? Give you a moment to fill out your impact statement. I forgot to put the editing book up here. I'll go get it.